Ned, did you see that that music AI company I sent you?
I have not had a chance to look at it yet.
Yeah, I was doing some research, and I found a music AI company that is able to not read. Most companies use metadata for relaying, for suggesting music, where this company is actually analyzing the audio file and is able to use that tech to detect what your listening habits are and make recommendations based on that. So you have a deck. I sent it over to you, or a link to a deck.
I'm just trying to think of all the ones you sent me. Do you remember the name of the company?
It is.
Was that BuzzAngle?
No, it's another one, and I sent it to you 10 minutes ago. It should be.
Oh, I don't have it yet. Okay.
Okay.
Now I've been reading about, I guess, Ripple and their music initiative and their potential use of AI. But everybody wants to potentially use AI at this point.
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My connection's slow this morning.
Mm-hmm. Good morning, Daryl. And good morning, Greg. And
hello.
Great.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey. Yeah, sorry, I was a little late. I was talking to a vendor in South Africa who's doing a video for us to help people understand the difference between COM events and transactions. So we're gonna have that available to put up on the website and other places, so that because I know that was an issue for a lot of folks. So
that's excellent. That's good, Greg.
Yeah, we got it. We were able to come to a really equitable arrangement to get the video made, and he's doing a good job. So I'll have a draft for people to look at probably in another couple of days. We just were talking about some tweaks to the one that he did.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And who is Ali Sayed?
Yes, hi.
Hi there.
Glad to be here with you all. Let me introduce myself. I'm the founder of US Web Studio. It's a digital marketing agency here in Los Angeles. We build nationwide e-commerce stores, and we market them on search engines, social media. We also connect brands with major music events across the country. Fun fact about myself, I have a rock band here in LA. My first time here to join this call. I'm really excited to hear all the great initiatives in the blockchain by our chain. Thank you.
And by way of context, I met Ali at the Digital Entertainment World Conference a few weeks ago, and he emailed me recently, and I extended the invitation for him to participate or listen in on our call so he can hear about things that we're doing.
Oh, very good.
Thank you, Fabian.
You're welcome. Absolutely. As many times during our calls, a musician will show up and get to listen and ask questions in terms of where this technology is potentially going, and get a look under the hood as we discuss some of the plans of what we're working on doing in our on our streaming platform. I attached a link in the chat for that way you guys could see his web company, and I believe here is a link for his band, which Ali, I'm sorry, I haven't gotten a chance to listen to yet, but I do have the link here.
Oh, thank you. It is so cool. Thank you for this.
Good thing. No problem. Wonderful. All right. Well, I'll just dive in. As pretty much everybody here on the call, everybody here works for the company. So I'd say the only updates, which most of you already know, is that the team is focused right now on developing a whole world of UX UI slides specific to the experience for, number one, the artist intake or the song registry aspect of the back end, and the user facing experience of it all. I forwarded to most of you a link this morning to an AI company that I thought looked really interesting and might be able to have some type of API or engine that we can add to our infrastructure, which focuses more on the music and reading music files to determine what the listener's musical taste is versus the information that is embedded in metadata. So some of you will have received that, and I encourage you to take a look at the link, and we could have a further conversation about that next week. So that's what I've got to contribute for the moment.
Good. Well, I mean, I think we should probably let the community know that we're making progress towards a goal. The Rsong Cooperative Board directed the executive leadership to look at Rsong as an equity vehicle for investment into co-op related activities, especially as pertain to infrastructure in supporting the Rsong application. And that's progressing rather nicely. One of the things that we're looking at is the kind of corporation that the can you guys hear me?
We just lost you for a little bit.
Hang on a second. Okay. So yeah, it's like when I'm on Zoom, if I get a call coming in, and automatically interrupt Zoom, which I think is a bad behavior. But what I was saying was that one of the questions that we're exploring right now is what kind of corporation or legal entity Rsong should be. And to that end, I think what I've been contemplating and seems like sends the right kind of signal to the people we most want to support and attract, and that is a B corporation. So it doesn't help our cause right now to make Rsong itself be a cooperative. Although in an ideal world, I would love that. But it's harder in the US to have an equity kind of arrangement in a cooperative. It's not impossible, it's just harder. And I want to have fewer moving parts here. So, it's going to be some kind of corporation. And, there are a variety, there's an S Corp and a C Corp, LLC, and all of those things. But I think that the right market signal is a B corporation. Not a lot of people know about B corporations or benefit corporations, but they have a strong commitment to transparency and a stated commitment to public benefit, so that shareholders are understand that it's not just maximizing profit that is of benefit to the company at large, or in general. Does that make sense? Do people understand what I'm saying here? Just want to check in.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just reading the definition on Wikipedia right now.
Yeah, exactly. Just as a data point for people, at the time when Elo, the social network that was attempting to respond to the problems with Facebook, I don't know if people remember Elo, but Elo had a good run. They were sort of gathering about 1 million users an hour at one point, because of their commitment to um, a values-based operation, and they were a B Corp, and that was a pretty strong market signal for a lot of people. Um, so I think, something like that in terms of the corporate structure is reasonable, and that sort of balances between, wanting there to be an equity vehicle and wanting there to be, a clear, strong market signal that we are committed to serving um, the artists and their audiences. And then the other piece of the puzzle is, the jurisdiction. So again, I tend to, because of the forward thinking of Washington State, and in particular, Washington State's response to net neutrality. This is the extremely ill-considered decision by the FCC with respect to the rolling back of net neutrality, and Jay Inslee and Washington State's response to what to do about that. It makes the most sense, since an offering like Rsong fundamentally depends upon net neutrality. Aligning ourselves with a jurisdiction that is committed to a state level enforcement of net neutrality is a much better play than the sort of investor centered, maximizing profit investor centered vehicle like a Delaware C corp. So my argument currently is that from a values perspective and from a place of practicality, in terms of maximizing who the engagement from the market we're trying to reach, a Washington State B Corp makes the most sense, as a corporate, facing the corporate entity that is the container for the Rsong activity. So I just wanted people to get a sense of the work that's going on, and the thinking that's happening there, and get any feedback from folks.
Yeah, hey, Greg, on the B Corp, it doesn't look like that's an IRS thing. So, and it looks like a bunch of states support it, and then there's a different B Corp governing body. But how does this company then get registered? So the IRS, does it then become some other kind of corp in terms of the IRS?
From the IRS's perspective, it's effectively a C corp.
A C corp. Okay.
Yeah, right. It does have a designation, but with respect to taxation, it's a C corp. That's my understanding anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly about the stated commitment within the governance structure that maximizing profit is only one measure of success, and that there are other measures of success that have to do with the public benefit. Cool. Any other questions, comments?
I'm jumping in the middle here. It sounds like you're talking about the possibility of Rsong, or whatever it's going to be called, when it's spun off, becoming a B Corp. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When I was at Earth Economics, my previous gig, we were going to spin off the software development portion of the nonprofit to be a B Corp. I might have a whole bunch of files and write-ups about that, so I'll hunt around and see if I can dig something up.
That's awesome. Yeah, anything to help with that is would be gratefully accepted.
And I believe that the inventor of the B Corp actually lives in Seattle, the person who conceptualized it.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, in many respects, it's mostly about making sure that our intended market has a clear statement of the values, and that the values are baked into the governance.
I think that not only is it a good idea from an ethical standpoint, but I also think it's a good idea from a strategic standpoint, because if we're actually truly trying to provide an alternative streaming service that helps foster a middle class of musicians, I think it would be logical for any investor who is truly interested in that to kind of look at our corporate structure. And if our corporate structure kind of runs parallel with that vision, then I think it makes a lot of sense.
Good. Yeah. That's the thinking that I've gone through as well. So excellent. As I understand it, we might have Ravi join the call. Is he here?
He is not.
Okay. All right.
Not yet. He will join shortly.
Okay. Good. I'd love to get Ravi's take on the B Corp idea as well. So that's what I got in terms of updates. Anything else from other folks?
I think that all sounds wonderfully significant as we are ramping up everything for our project. You know, I think everybody here already knows the team is focused on the business plan, the financials, the slides, and the pitch deck. And I think within less than 2 weeks, we should have all that collateral ready for everybody.
Good. Yeah. In terms of sequencing, we kind of got into this yesterday on another call, but I think this group can also weigh in on this, and I think it's reasonable to sort of talk about it in a slightly more public forum. My feeling is that if the co-op assigns some significant assets to Rsong, for example, not to talk about controversial things, but if the player is assigned to Rsong as an asset, so it's an asset on the books, and then there's a corresponding, like money doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? There's a corresponding debt on the books. Then what we want is to demonstrate that Rsong is creating value on its own very quickly, so that investors coming in, they say, oh, look, they've got all these assets, and they have the corresponding balancing debt, but then there's this value that they've created on their own in just a short period of time. And so from that, and that makes it a clear win in terms of being a good investment. So the thought is, what is the value that can be generated quickly? And in my opinion, the thing that we can most quickly generate is relationships with artists. So if we can get an intake pipeline going, including sort of the basic intake feature that we've been talking about and lining up for development, then and then use that intake pipeline to actually, or use the intake pipeline software to actually create a small intake pipeline. Then and if we can get that done, let's say in 6 weeks time, then that would be a clear indication to an investor, wow, this is a happening thing, it's got some momentum, and they have assets on their books that is value from their own effort, and not just provided by the cooperative. So that makes it a more attractive investment.
Mm-hmm.
But let me hear from you guys as to how that sounds.
So It really still doesn't sit right with me. So what I was thinking last night is it would be great if we could find one or two investors, just people who we're friendly with, and just ask them what they think about this and how they would, want to see a company, a startup company, and what would be attractive to them. Because I think while we all have various experiences, it would be just great to get an impartial third party kind of weighing in. Yeah, I'm just uncomfortable with the company with Rsong taking on that kind of asset debt from the get-go. And I'm still thinking in my mind, having a license arrangement with the co-op that pays per listen for the assets that we have. I don't know, but to me that seems a better approach. But I kind of would like to talk to some investors and see what their take on it is.
So this is fair, but let's see if we can get to the nub of your discomfort. So in your mind, would it be fair or equitable for Rsong to take over assets that the co-op has without paying the co-op back in any way?
Oh no, but I'm saying they will pay them back, but it'll be.
Hang on. No, I'm not talking about the means by which it's paid back. Just recognizing that they owe the co-op in some way for what they've received. Well, we do separate implementation from specification, right? to put it into software terms. So do you agree that if the co-op were to give Rsong an asset like the player, that the rsong.com should give something back to the co-op? Is that reasonable?
I think it's reasonable. I think you and I have different ideas on the valuation of it, but yes, in principle, I think that would be reasonable.
Okay, good. And we can extend this principle of if rsong.com gets an asset that is currently belongs to the co-op, that it shouldn't be a gift, no matter what the asset is. That would look funny to any investor.
I would agree with that.
Okay, good. So then now all we're talking about is how to recognize that debt on the books.
Okay, and how to value it. So yes.
Okay, good. Right. So I think whatever we have to come to some sense of the value, and then we have to put it. So when rsong.com is to receive such an asset, it puts the value of the asset in its plus column, and then correspondingly what it gives to the co-op, it puts in its minus column.
Yeah, no, I get that, but so I don't really see it as that kind of asset. I see it more of something that it's technology that Rsong is licensing from the co-op, and therefore the co-op retains ownership, but Rsong has a license to use it with a fee structure that's defined ahead of time. But the asset is actually not owned by Rsong, but by the co-op.
Ah, okay. That's an interesting structure. Yep. So that means that if Rsong wants to make any changes, it has to come to the co-op.
And in the immersion license?
No, the player or the asset management system or anything.
We could look at it that way. So yes, but this is if we treat all of these quote unquote assets the same. And I could see where Rsong does take ownership of the player. And
okay, that's what I was focusing on in our example, so that we don't talk about the other stuff in public. Yeah.
So for the player, yes, I could see that as an asset that gets transferred over.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So the player gets transferred over, and if it receives the player, then it should, by rights, give the co-op consideration.
Yes.
Okay, and so that obligation of consideration would have to be recognized on the books. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. I think that's all we've been talking about. Is just is just that, you know, if it receives the asset management system or the player, it's on the plus side, it's, you know, what it's got, and then on the minus side, it's what it owes for having received those things.
Yes. Now, there's one caveat, especially for the asset management system, which is open source.
Sure, it is open source, but if there is going to be, what we found is that you know, ownership engagement is 9/10 of ownership.
Can you clarify that a little?
Yes. So the asset management system itself is not so easily modified. You can build on top of it. You can tweak it, but the core of it is less easily modified, at least currently, unless you have the right sort of talent. So it's, you know, its engagement is 9/10 of ownership, right? So the people who built it know how to change it, and people who haven't built it have a harder time coming up to speed. That's effectively been the rule of law in open source projects. You know, it becomes, as the open source projects get more and more complicated, or complex is a better word, it becomes harder and harder for another team to go and take the code base, right? That's why.
Perhaps I'm always, you know, with all my experience, I always shy away from statements like, you know, only the person who wrote it could ever modify it.
No, I shy away from that as well. But that's why I say 9/10 of ownership.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, so some fair valuation then would have to be assigned to the asset management system. And from Rsong's perspective, you know, I'm not sure it's in a fledgling startup's best interest to have one of their core pieces open source.
Oh, I think that would be a real problem.
I know.
Right?
I know. I'm not saying yay or nay. I'm just saying it's a discussion item, because if that's our competitive advantage. So let me back up a second. I'm curious to know what a VC person would think about that. And if they're forking over $5-10 million, and they know that, you know, one of the triumvirate, right? You know, one of the three pieces of our platform is open source, what they would think about that. That's all.
Sure, but I think the open source model has been proven out long enough that there are certainly a wide class of investors who understand the value of open source, especially for things like this, right? From, you know, everything from Spring to, you know, I mean, there's dozens and dozens of open source asset management or infrastructure that can make asset management easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying nay or yay. I'm just saying I'd like to think about it and maybe get some outside input. But yes.
Yeah, cool. Then,
okay, so the rub for me basically is the expense of the immersion license, and because that's a huge nut, right? And so
yeah, but we're not. I mean, having a the difference now is just it has to be recognized on the books, and then the question is, how is it paid back?
Well, that's why I personally like the license model. I mean, I was telling Fabian, you know, like IBM makes, you know, micro pennies on every hard disk that's sold because they own the patent to the Bernoulli technology that allows multiple platters to spin inside a small enclosure without, you know, crashing into each other, right? And so because of that patent, you know, every hard drive manufacturer has to pay IBM a royalty on that. And they have thousands of those kind of royalties, right?
Which is why everyone's moving to SSD.
Yeah, but I'm sure behind the scenes they own the patents on that technology also. Every quarter they publish a patent filed and a patent potential filing binder. It's about an inch thick, and they do that every quarter, right? So it's their business model. Anyway, all I'm saying is that that's how I was envisioning the immersion deal, because even as an asset, we don't have full control of that asset, right? So anyway, so some kind of license deal where every play, right, every bona fide stream of a song, we're actually paying to the co-op, a fee, and whether it's 10% of the cost of our profit on the stream or whatever the number is, and then the co-op gets an unlimited, as long as our song is successful. So I guess you're assuming some of the risk with that. But then money is, fees are constantly flowing back into the co-op, and then our song is basically a client of the license that you're bestowing on them. So.
I hear you. But even there, you're recognizing on the books a fiscal obligation, and anyone can sit down and calculate over time what that fiscal obligation looks like.
But it becomes an operating cost and not an asset.
Sure, that's.
You would see it on your trial balance, but you wouldn't see it on the asset side.
Sure, but that also might mean that the investors don't see the real value. Right. So when they look at your asset sheet, they go, what's here that's differentiating?
Well, one is that we do have that license agreement, and we do have an asset management system up and running, and then it's the social connections. You, Fabian, and Daryl, hopefully Michael Flynn. Signing up and getting that recognition as we're running, a profitable company.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think at this point we're really just talking about packaging the same information.
Sure.
And so I'm happy with a variety of different packages for the information, but I think the savvy investor is going to see each of these as different packagings, and we want to attract, in my opinion, smart, engaged investors who are going to have opinions about how the books look and how we go to market and all of those other things. But so this is healthy conversation. I really appreciate this. The different ways of thinking about it. Yeah, this is really
and I'm
good.
curious if anybody else has other opinions.
Yeah, agreed.
Like maybe Jonathan or.
Yeah, I'll just echo. I share many of the same thoughts and concerns as Ned. Ned and I have spoken about it at length, and the most important thing in my mind is to make sure that the equity vehicle, the platform, is safe and not overburdened with this massive debt, but we are able to creatively create the mechanism to pay back that debt through the activities of the platform. But the proposition of how this business is introduced to VCs needs to be one where that debt is not showing up with this big pimple on its face. You know what I'm saying? It just needs to come across that we have this ability with all of these technologies that we have, and that we have a unique way of being able to pay the co-op back for the use of that technology.
Yeah, to me, this is a very strange way of looking at things. I have to say. So even if we look at a large, upscale audio research laboratory that I shall not name, they are in exactly the same boat. They didn't create that thing out of nothing. There's a corresponding round of investment that has to be paid back. So it's like there isn't a company on the planet that unless there's they have a windfall from a dying uncle. There isn't a company on the planet that has assets that came from the sky, right? The assets on their sheets came from somewhere, and they have to pay for them, right? That's how books work, right? Whatever you got came from somewhere, and so it isn't a debt; it's a net zero. Here's the value of our assets. Here's what it cost us, right? And then you can, and then you leverage those assets in a different market situation to increase their value, so that they're valued more than what they cost to produce, right? I think that's the basic investment principle we're operating on. Yes or no?
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely.
So I'm not as worried that investors are going to run screaming because there's that it costs Rsong something to get the assets that it's trying to leverage in the marketplace.
Well, all it falls into just one very simple thing. We got to be able to build out the right value proposition for musicians to get on board, so they're able to make more money with us than in any other platform, which will then allow for mass adoption, millions upon millions of transactions on the platform, which will then translate into us being able to pay off the debt quickly. So
yeah.
Yep.
And I guess I wouldn't even. I think the languaging it as debt, I think, is probably the stumbling block. Right?
Yes.
Don't think about it that way. You think about those assets.
Right.
Okay, so then I maybe we can move this off to a private discussion.
Yeah, I think that's probably that part is good. But I think just the discussion about the structuring of again, towards the principle of radical transparency, toward the principles of maximizing public benefit. My intent is to have an open, or as open a conversation as we can about the structure of the investment vehicle, so that people who are interested in Rsong can understand our thinking, and that people who are interested in the co-op can understand our thinking, and that they have a sense that we're giving it its due consideration, right? For the co-op, we are bound by IOB4 to make sure that the membership is apprised of significant decisions like this. And so the conversation that we're having here, in my mind, is actually really important, right? It speaks to the structure of this, and it speaks to the values that go into the structure of this, and it speaks to our understanding of the market, and the realities on the ground in the market. And all of those, I want to be, honestly, I want to be able to be judged by. I want the co-op membership to get a sense of the depth of our thinking. I want potential investors to be able to come back to an appropriately edited version of this call, and understand our our thinking, and I want them also to see that we are a culture that is deliberative and hopefully thorough in our deliberations, and that we make decisions, we make evidence-based decisions. It's not all just shooting from the hip, so to speak.
Yep. No, I agree with that 100%.
Cool. Any other topics anyone wants to address, or any other comments about this topic?
Greg, just when you get a chance, check WhatsApp when you get a chance. It's unrelated to this call, but I think it's worth your time to look at that.
Okay. I will do. Speaking of which, another thing that's happened is we're engaged with a group that I think will be able to support the development of Rsong. In terms of adding additional features. They were able to take the Rsong projects, our Rsong acquisition, and Rsong proxy, and and get them going to a certain point. I think they hit a small snag on the on one thing, but by and large, they seem to be quite engaged and are interested in moving forward with some work.
Oh,
Yeah.
can you say who that is?
Not yet, not until
Okay.
we have a more specific relationship with them.
Or what features that they might add on to what we're developing?
So the idea is that we want to get Kayvon more and more engaged in platform core development, and we'd like therefore to support him in building out or making any changes with respect to the Rsong backend. And at the same time, while they're making those changes, that's an opportune time to kind of fork the code in inverted commas, right? Quote unquote, fork the code for the asset management system and make some tweaks and build out the arterial system.
To start already on arterial. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, we just while they're doing, for example, let's assume that they were the ones that were actually going to do the intake features under Kayvon's guidance or with Kayvon's support. So that Kayvon could be spending most of his time on the core development. Then we would be looking at them doing the intake features, and while they're doing that, it's natural for them, since they're already mucking about in the code, to make a variation of the code that takes in the fine art impressions and does and reads from the table for those particular payments.
But this is connected to the art project that we're considering that would be using the same engine. That that has a new unique feature that would benefit the music platform.
Right. So from an engineering perspective, if you've got two projects that are basically both just variations on the same code base, right? If you start on one, it's reasonable to go ahead and do the other as long as they're not too distant from each other.
Yep.
And in this case, they're really, really almost identical.
They're super similar. It's a digital asset, micro attached to the I get it. Totally get it.
Exactly. So we just basically have this group do both things.
Yep.
If they are going to work on the asset management, then I think myself and Fabian need to be involved also. Especially
of course.
This is going to be a future asset.
Of course. We were doing kind of diligence on that group.
Sure.
And they seem to be making forward progress there. They sort of pass muster on the diligence side.
Great.
And so we'll move on to the next phase of the conversation.
Excellent. So that brings up another interesting question, which is Rsong. Any additional? Rsong is a platform for streaming music, but our chain is going to be the one pursuing additional asset management systems.
That's correct.
Or is there an intent that once Rsong is up and running, it actually becomes the umbrella for all future asset management systems built on our chain?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it's worth conversation. My feeling is that if we just look at a blockchain-based streaming service that has unprecedented audio delivery, that's a big giant market and a big giant application space, and probably that's enough. That's on the order of a Spotify, right, or an Apple Music. That's what that effort grows up to be. And so I think that's plenty of work. I mean, this is just me talking. It's like other people may have different points of view, but that feels like that's plenty of work for like the next decade. And maybe having another group that's focused on more generalized asset management or supply chain management kinds of things. Infrastructure is maybe it's better to kind of have that be in another organization or group. um, in particular, I can imagine that there are going to be lots of different asset management systems, and at a certain point it makes sense for them to kind of fork off for specific industry sectors. So for example, as long there's a strong fork at the place where you start introducing physical assets that are being tracked digitally. Right. If you only have digital assets, then you can control those assets directly at the point of storage. But as soon as you introduce physical assets that are being tracked by electronic records, then that's a fundamentally different piece of infrastructure. And so um, you know, those are different systems because they have different requirements. You have to constantly be reconciling the electronic records with the actual physical um, things that you're tracking, assets that you're tracking. So there's, for example, there's RFID kinds of technologies that probably need to be integrated. There's reconciliation kinds of processes. Well, the database says this, but when I go, as an engineer and I go out to the field, this is what I see, and so now we have to reconcile them. Oh, well, where did the missing pieces go, or or why doesn't our database have this piece that's clearly installed here, and that kind of thing. So all of that is, feature and functionality that would be specific to those kinds of applications that are not necessarily associated with digital asset management, and in particular would seem a pretty big stretch for a company that's already, like tackling redoing like the next Spotify.
So this is possibly tangential, but I think it is an intersect. I had some conversations with Mike Stay and some others way back in August about whether our chain was going to be supporting an ERC20 like functionality, and the answer was at that time yes. And I also got a similar yes response about ERC. I think it's 721 like tokens. What about ERC 1404 like functionality? Will DApp developers be able to issue things that provide that same sort of functionality as 721 and 1404?
Well, I mean, certainly we will have our own. I mean, DApp developers will be able to make their own tokens, but beyond making their own tokens, what are you proposing?
Well, I think in terms of feature set for people that might be migrating off of Ethereum to the Archain platform, having those kinds of tokenization options available might be of interest. I'm just curious. It's not a mission critical question at all.
Well, yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes. I just wanted to elucidate or get you to elaborate on the token features that you want to drive towards specifically. But the idea is that this is like one of the richest playgrounds in terms of being able to hone in on the requirements for stamping out different kinds of tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, we have a fairly rich and detailed tokenization architecture. that is, co-evolved with the wallet architecture. So I feel actually really good about that because of the way it's built off of OCAP security principles. So I think we can do way better than ERC20, like orders of magnitude better than ERC20 in terms of the right configuration of features.
Oh yeah. ERC20 is I don't want to say trivial, but it's not a big deal. But I was also talking about security tokens and
there we go. This is what I was trying to get you to say out loud. Yeah. yeah, exactly. So we have the tech to be able to support that. The real question is the social relationships, so the regulatory relationships, and how that lines up with the various parties that are trying to make an economic proposition, right? So the artists and everyone else. So, like, for example, let's say that Taylor Swift issues a Taylor Swift token. Does it make sense for that to be a security token? Under what conditions does it make sense for it to be a security token? Now, like, one of the things that we have been talking about is when you're looking at the estate of an artist, right? So let's say the artist is no longer alive. Then it might make sense. A security token might make sense in that context if you're talking about the valuation not just of digital assets, but other kinds of things that might be holdings of that estate. And that might enter into the play. So, like, relationships with vendors who produce swag, for example, that are associated with the estate of that artist. So in that context, the security token could potentially be an interesting vehicle. I don't know, I haven't really looked into that, but it's one of the things that immediately pops up when Fabian says, how do we tokenize a catalog that for an artist that's long since deceased, especially if a new catalog for a deceased artist suddenly shows up. Right. The question is, you'd like to be able to wrap a tokenized economic proposition around that, and how do you do that? How does that all play out? And there might be some utility in a security token.
Right. Okay, so the more general point I want to make is predicated on my feeling that the killer app for Ethereum was not CryptoKitties or anything else. It was tokenization. It was ERC20. That was really the killer app that made Ethereum successful. And so I'm thinking in terms of our enhanced tokenization capabilities and the greater security with OCAP and so forth, that the other classes of tokens, like non-fungible tokens and security tokens and whatnot, are worth all of us thinking about as, for example, Rsong. And those are great examples that you gave of a deceased artist, for example. What kind of token makes sense? I think thinking in terms of the tokenomics and the classes of tokens is something worth really thinking carefully about.
So this to me is super exciting. What you're saying here, because I've said it multiple times, and I'm just going to keep saying it until people kick me to shut up. What I really, really want to do is foster a very high-profile conversation with the major stakeholders in the music community. Right. So I would really like to have high profile artists. I'd really like to have high profile rights holders, and other major, distributors and other major stakeholders in an ongoing conversation about the tokenomics that is informed by the tech and the kinds of instruments that you're describing, so that this group can come to an extensible, flexible solution that fits their needs. And because first and foremost, because I think it's the most fantastic marketing we could ever do for the co-op, and for the platform, and for Rsong.
I agree. I'm fully with you on that in terms of inviting high-profile artists into the conversation. And I think one of the pieces that's going to attract them in is once we have the deck, the platform, the collateral, all these various pieces for people to see. At which point they'll take us seriously, and they will.
I agree. Yeah, we need to continue walking the walk.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to say to Jonathan, Jonathan's point is, we should consider this, the value of this capability and instrumentation seriously. And what I'm saying is it actually fits with our go-to-market plan. So one of the biggest pieces of the go-to-market plan for me is engineering that conversation. So let's say, specific, like to be really deep. I know we got a staff call in just a minute or two, but to be really detailed, let's imagine a series of conferences, the outcome of which is a token economic solution that the major stakeholders can get behind and endorse.
Yep, I'm with you. I see someone has raised their hand, Ali, and then I think after this we address this question, we need to jump to the staff meeting.
Sure, go for it.
Ali, you want to unmute?
Yes, thank you, Fabian. I just wanted to ask a quick question on the go-to-market strategy. Actually, you answered a part of the question saying a cornerstone of it is already starting a conversation with high-profile artists, which would help familiarize the public with the new platforms. But are you thinking also of the institutions that will make the communities more engaging and propelling like the usage of the platform? I know that from Fabian's speech or presentation in DEW, he was talking about having the high school communities and the universities communities very well informed of this. How would you go about this, like implementing such a strategy in your go-to-market?
I get it. Go ahead, Greg.
No, you. After you, please.
One of the places that I'm targeting, there's a relationship with a high-level music organization that brings instruments and music to high schools all over America. And I met with this person at Digital Entertainment, met them again at the Polestar conference, and discussed all of this as we're waiting to get the platform presented. That way we could present to their organization, and literally within a few clicks and pushes, we can gain access to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of high school students across the country. And in the back of my mind, there is the show, the bringing this, or having ambassadors in each of these cities that could bring this to high schools and universities and music departments to show, look, you guys can collaborate on a song, you can have your identity attached to the song, you can upload it onto the platform. So it's very much in the back of my mind, but we have to get to the point where we're ready to have the platform to start presenting it.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Ali, thanks for joining, everybody. Thanks for jumping on the call. And it's time for the staff meeting. So